just about to kick off. All right. Good evening. All right. Good evening and welcome to the May 29th regular meeting of the Garrison Union Free School District Board of Education. As always, our first agenda item is the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me start with a mention, a recognition not on the agenda, but that is to acknowledge and congratulate Jill Lake and Sarah Tormey, Sarah will take her seat on the board at our first meeting after the close of this school year on whatever date we set for the reorg meeting, July 10th. We look forward to you joining us. Jill, congratulations again for your second term. Well done, both of you. We have two presentations this evening. Those of you who are maybe looking at the printed agenda will see that the PISA project is listed second. In the interest of permitting Garrett to get out of here at a safe and reasonable hour, given the weather and distance he has to travel, if there's no objection, we're going to reverse those two and do the PISA project update first. I didn't think anyone would object. Thank you, Paul. Garrett, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening. So I want to give you an update on the project, the capital project, and I'll start by saying that you're right on track to see the project voting in September, which is what we were planning for last time I presented in January. Before I start, I actually looked back because I was curious to think about what we've accomplished so far. And the district did an RFP in 2015, actually, it was due on June 19th of 2015 to hire us. So we're coming up on our 3-year anniversary. And in that time, we did a facilities evaluation, developed a long-range plan. We did 5 board meetings, 11 facilities committee meetings, did 2 faculty and staff meetings. They were quite interesting. We met with the playground committee at least once or twice, did a faculty staff survey, we did a career day presentation. We were involved in 3 community task force meetings for this capital project. 4 public walkthroughs. I don't think I attended all 4 of those. Some of those were on Saturday, and Laura did those, or Mike. Public forums, 3 public forums, and then we did some additional investigations and financial analysis from Bernie Donegan along the way. So if anybody ever says that the district hasn't done its homework in terms of preparation for this capital project, they would be wrong, because you're well prepared.
Thank you.
So. Tonight I want to talk about project timeline, give you an update on the seeker. You authorized us to begin the seeker process at the January board meeting, discuss project scope, and there's some things that we need to talk about there, and then talk about next steps. So this is a slide that we've seen many times in terms of the overall process for a capital project. We're still right on the verge of seeing a board authorization to take the project out for vote, so we're very close at this point. Here's the overall timeline for the project. So the goal here is for the board to take action on July 10th. That would be a seeker resolution and a board resolution to take the project out for a referendum vote. The voter referendum would occur on September 24th. That's the date we've been planning for. Then we'll start design. We'll submit to SED in the spring or summer of 2020. It'll sit at SED for a while because they're slow on reviews, although they are speeding up actually, which is interesting. And we would anticipate SED approval in the winter of 2021. We had a conversation about that. In this schedule, winter of 2021 means the beginning of 2021, so like January, February of 2021. And we would bid it in the spring of 2021, and construction would occur that summer 2021, and then go into the following summer of 2022 as well. Are there any questions about the schedule? We all clear on that? This is exactly the same schedule I showed you last time.
Right. It is interesting to note one of the reasons September 24th is an important date, and there's things you just can't plan for. currently getting voting machines for a month later is a difficult proposition because they're already committed to other districts for other purposes. So September 24th is an important date for us.
Right. And then afterwards, after the general election, they also get sequestered for a period of time,
Right.
so
Yeah.
there's that too. So this really is a carefully calculated schedule to make sure that it works on all levels. So, seeker. We talked a little bit about this last time. You did a board resolution for it, but I just wanted to refresh everyone's memory. State Environmental Quality Review Act, it's a requirement if you're spending public money to adhere to this, this law. And so in conversations and meetings with the attorneys, it was determined that this is an unlisted action. You have a historic component to this building, it's on the National Register, so there's a factor there. The attorneys determined that it was an unlisted action, which is actually in the middle of the sort of range of seeker types. Type 2, it's backwards, I think, is the straightforward one. This is one step up. This has some additional requirements to follow, the most important of which is you have to notify potentially involved agencies that you're intending to do a project and that you're intending to be the lead agent. And so we have gone through that process. We developed an environmental assessment form. It was reviewed by the attorneys and the district. The agency letter, there's only in this project only one that the attorneys said that they felt needed to be done, and that was to SED. And that was issued, and now we're in the process of waiting for a response, although SED generally does not respond to those letters. The way it works is if the agency does not respond, then it defaults back to you guys. So no response is an answer of they're accepting the resolution.
Are we outside, how far are we into, or are we outside the 30-day waiting period?
So the 30-day waiting period, the letter was sent on May 23rd. So
Okay, so
we'll finish, right around June 23rd. So lots of things happened in the interim since I've been here. The things I want to point out in addition to the lead agency letter is we submitted the project to the State Historic Preservation Office. It's called SHPO. And there's a particular protocol to do that, but we wanted to alert them that we're going to be making some modifications to the outside of the building. There's going to be a lift on the front of the building, a handicap lift, and then there will also be a doorway cut into where a window is in the, not in the original part of the building, but in the 1960s wing. So we showed that to them, gave it to them in the middle of March, and they responded about 3 or 4 weeks later saying, fine, you're good to go. So we've got a green light there. The only thing we're technically waiting for is for the 30-day waiting period to end, and then the board will be able to act on the seeker resolution. We don't write the seeker resolution. Your general counsel is going to do that. Chris Langloyd from Gervin Ferlazzo will write that because he's a seeker specialist within their firm. I know Chris usually works with you guys, but Chris is an actual seeker. So you're all set. Assuming the board chooses to go out to a referendum, it will be it will show up in the legal notices, and there's a whole protocol to follow for that. That'll happen in July when you're ready to vote in September. Any questions? So, capital project scope. This is exactly the scope that we showed you last time. I'm going to just read these things off because it's been a while and I want to refresh everybody's memory. Partial roof replacement. This is in the elementary school side of the building. Upgrade finishes in the elementary school, so ceilings, floors, doors, cabinetry, those kinds of things. Bathroom renovations, those are really kind of the core of the project in a lot of ways. Upgrade to the fire detection system and reconfigure the courtyard exiting. Replace the heating system. We talked about that a lot. I'm going to talk a little bit about that more in a second, but let me just get through the list. Plumbing upgrades, so just some general upgrades in the plumbing system. Lighting replacement in the elementary school. That's an important one because it's going to improve the lighting in the classroom, but it's also going to reduce your energy use because we're talking about going to LED lighting, which will decrease your carbon footprint, which we're all happy about. Play area, playground enhancements. Minimal improvements to the library space here. Would remove the computer lab, replace the carpet, and add some small group instructions under here with some movable walls. Not the whole grand change to the library. Gym sound and lighting systems, secure main entrance, and change the way you get into the office during business hours, so you can come straight in there and get checked in as opposed to coming in either end of the corridor during the day. Access control and video surveillance systems, so like card swipe systems and cameras. New phone system, which I think is really, from a security standpoint, a critical need here. So I'll finish the list, but before I do, I want to just say this is all kind of nuts and bolts, bare bones kind of stuff. This is critical needs in the building. Some ADA accessible route improvements. The bathrooms will enhance and improve accessibility as well, and then an assisted listening system for the gym. So nuts and bolts project. Any questions about this? I am going to talk about the heating system in a second. So
Yeah, I've got two. Just to clarify so the ADA improvements with changing the entrance into the office. Will there be an ADA? Will there be a lift at those front steps?
Right.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly right. So as you walk up the main entrance stairs to the main entrance now, there's a metal handrail that protects you from falling off the stoop at that point. That's right where the lift is. So that way, instead of people having to get buzzed in from the far corner and then come all the way down, they can come in just like everybody else does, essentially.
And the play area, playground enhancements, what is that?
So what we've done is we've just built an allowance for some playground equipment, basically some additional playground equipment. It's something that we determined during the design phase what that actually would be. So just trying to work with what's already happened there, what's going to happen, and take it the next step, another step forward. Okay. All right. So heating system. So at the last meeting, we sort of regretfully took the geothermal off the table because of cost. And one of the things that's happened in the interim is that Turner Construction, a very reputable construction management firm, has offered to assist the district in putting some scope, some dollars to these scopes, because the project's happening a year later. The market is changing dramatically, bid market is changing dramatically, and so we wanted their input on the pricing. And they're actively working on that. But Peter Davern, the head of Turner, who's a Garrison resident, was gracious enough to offer, in addition to doing that at no cost, which is a significant investment on their part, they also offered to think about the heating system and to see if there were some other options to be considered. They, at our request, priced out the unit ventilator system. They have also they're also working on pricing out a geothermal system, kind of ballpark, just to confirm that we're in the right ballpark. Make sure it's not something to be considered. And then they also brought another system to the table that we think is actually worth considering. It's called a variable refrigerant flow system. It's kind of in between a univentilator system and a geothermal system in terms of its energy efficiency. It's going to be more costly than the univentilator system, but it doesn't rely on the geothermal wells. It's a system that we think is worth considering. It will certainly increase the cost, but it might be a benefit. We've gotten some preliminary information from Turner that just came to me yesterday. I passed it on to my engineers, and we're going to do an engineer talk meeting between their engineers and my engineers to hash out some of the assumptions and all the details of that. So I'm not really ready to kind of to go deep into the information at this point, but we will soon be to that point. And so what's happening now is that we're finalizing the budget for the project because, like I said, the market's changing, and so the numbers are unfortunately going to have to go up. Whether we
When you say the market is changing, prices are going up.
They're going up in odd ways, and sometimes dramatic ways. So when I talk about the pricing, I'm I'm switching gears a little bit to say, in addition to the heating system conversation, we're also revisiting the pricing on the rest of the project as well, with Turner's assistance. Just, and, you know, initial look, some things are up, some things are about where we were at, a couple things are down, but I don't think I quite understood. So in general, the prices are going to, unfortunately, be higher. One might ask, well, if we had voted this project earlier, would we have been immune from this? Would we have been early enough? And probably not, is my opinion of that, because I think what would have happened was we were working with budgets that were developed 2 and 3 years ago. We held some cost escalation in there, but I don't think it was enough to cover what we're facing now. And so I feel like there's probably a pretty good chance that we would have voted a project back in December with those budgets, and we might have been facing some real budget challenges when we come to bid day. So for that, you know, maybe there's a silver lining in all this. Our expectation is it's going to take a couple weeks to finalize budgets on our part with Turner's involvement, and then the financial advisors, Bernie Gonigan's office, will also need to rerun numbers, because as we talk about, if we talk about increasing the dollar value of the project, that will also have an impact on the cost per household that you all will need to sort of grapple with. And so what it does is it leads to, well, what are the next steps? We're going to adjust the budgets, talk about that. We're going to then have Bernie Gonigan revise the financials so that you can see what the tax impact is going to be. And then number 3 is kind of the key, that it will be a decision of, do we need to change scope? Do we need to reduce some things out of the project in order to stay under a certain price threshold to take a project out to the voters? And so that's kind of where we're at in terms of the next steps. I feel that we have, although there's not a lot of time, we have enough time to accomplish all that between now and July 10th, which is the point where you're, you know, at this point currently scheduled to do the referendum, the board resolution for the referendum. Will be a fair amount of work though, but I think it's certainly reasonable to see that happen. We've got a lot of homework done, and this is just a matter of sort of making some final decisions. So, questions, David?
Garrett, you recommended against the geothermal system when we discussed that, but you're open to this system, and I'm wondering what's different and what you see positive about the system that Turner's proposing.
Yeah. Yep. So my feeling about the geothermal was one strictly of cost. If I knew you could afford it and the community would say yes, and I still am, you know, more than willing to consider it. But at this point, the geothermal ship has sailed a bit because the seeker is based on a system that doesn't involve that. So why would I be willing to consider this system? I think it provides some ability for you as a district to be able to say we are committed to reducing our carbon footprint in a very positive way. I think it's not the incremental increase that the geothermal was, so it's not as costly. How costly it's going to be, Turner and I are still working that out, because his first number I thought was maybe a little low, frankly, but that's neither here nor there. We'll come to an agreement on that. I'm also feeling like there's some educational benefit of this from a student standpoint, that to be able to say to students coming through that we have chosen to do the system because there's a philosophical approach to how we're choosing to live in this world. I think there's a great benefit to that. And I think it may be within reach of the finances that this community might support. I'm not a community member, so I can't judge that, but I think it's within reach.
Now, I assume that there's also a payback here, right? I mean, that maintenance will be substantially less. Over time, there'll be payback.
Yep, so Turner ran some initial numbers that show this variable refrigerant flow system to be more efficient than a unit ventilator system and less efficient than a geothermal system. It's kind of, what we would all expect. So you're gonna save incrementally on energy use compared to a less efficient system. So yes, it's gonna save you money, but it's really, really important that people understand what I'm saying here, because no matter what, your energy bills are going up, because we have to meet current code, and in order to do that, you're gonna pay more in utilities than you used to pay. And so, yes, we're saving energy with this variable refrigerant flow system compared to a unit ventilator system, but you're currently paying something like this in your existing energy use. So it's going to go up to get there.
But you're saying that our energy costs would go up no matter what system we chose.
Absolutely. And it's just a question of relatively how much are they going to go up. And so...
and you don't know that right now.
And no one can calculate it, frankly. And in the end, if someone spent a lot of time calculating it, it would all be based on assumptions, and it would be an educated guess at best.
It seems to me the principal reason for considering the Turner's suggestions is that it can be done under the terms, it could be implemented under the terms of the current seeker application.
Right.
If we were to go to something else, or digging wells, like a geothermal system, we would be back to, I'm asking for agreement, we would be back to square one on the seeker application.
Yeah.
And that would basically blow the entire timeline.
You wouldn't make it.
We wouldn't make it for September, who knows when we would make it at that point.
Right. Yep. The question is, will the community support this project? Whatever you put into the project, will the community support it? That's the key question. I have a belief that this community is going to value both this school, because look at what your current budget vote was, 3-1, right? I mean, that's a phenomenal turnout to support a school. And so that gives me a lot of confidence to say that if you're able to communicate the message, and I really think this is not just the administration's responsibility to communicate the message, but it's the board's, it's the community members who are here supporting this as a project. It's all of your responsibility to get your neighbors to vote. And you can't say vote yes, but you can get your neighbors to vote. That's the important thing. So, yeah.
So, in the facilities meeting, you said that the variable refrigerant flow system is powered by electricity.
Oh, thank you,
And
Sean.
so that's something that you hadn't mentioned.
Yes. So the system, and I don't want to blow everybody's mind by getting too technical, but first of all, we've done a lot of these systems multiple times, so we know this system. It's not a pie in the sky thing. It's usually done in office buildings or more compact buildings that have distributed heat and cooling loads simultaneously. So that's a little bit atypical to see it in an entire school, but in this situation, I think it's still a good fit. But it's a heat pump system, so it's like taking a refrigerator or an air conditioner, which can either cool or heat, and do that to each room. So you cool it or heat it. But the key about it is it's electric based. Okay, so the whole system will be electric based. And one of the things that we'll need to do is we'll need to upgrade the electric service in this building to handle all this new electric demand. But it will also mean that your utility bills, instead of going from fuel bill and electric, will go to electric. Now I'm just talking about the elementary school because we're still saying that the middle school heating system, except for the classrooms, the rest of the middle school would stay as it is. We've got a lot of life left in that system, and it'd be costly to change it. So I would still recommend sticking with the elementary school and then maybe considering the middle school classrooms. Probably that would be a yes, but cost may be a factor. So what this system does is it commits the district for decades to come to paying electric bills. Okay, that's what's going to happen. And electricity going to be cheaper than fuel? you know, where do you get your electricity from? Those are all questions that are part of this decision, because you're basically saying we're going to an all-electric system, we're going to pay electric bills, and maybe it's a educated guess or a bet or a gamble, I don't know, but you're going to be getting electricity. Now, where do you get your electricity from? What produces the electricity? In New York State, a good portion of it's produced by nuclear, by hydroelectric, and then some non-hydroelectric too. Maybe a third of it's produced by natural gas. There's very little coal, there's very little fuel oil produced. But if you just buy energy from the grid, it's going to be a mix of that. And you might choose to say, we're only going to buy this kind of energy that's produced. It's possible to do that. The utility company would just buy it from someplace else and get that. But that's another factor. And then the other thing too is, these systems, and geothermal the same, they pair very well with solar. If you can create electricity on site, then great. But the thing that we all have to remember is that's a capital expense. So not only would we be saying, you know, to the voters, please vote on, please approve a capital project that does the heating system, then you also have to get them to approve this solar project too. I would not recommend doing that in this project. I'd say, look, it's going to be a big enough hurdle to get a heating system passed, deal with the energy bills changing, and then focus on solar potentially down the road, or choose to buy electricity how you choose to, those kinds of things. Look, we may wake up and you realize that the incremental cost to go to the variable refrigerant flow system is also prohibitive. You might see that. I'm not going to weigh in on that one, because it's totally your money. It's the community's money. It's up to you as a board to lead the charge on what the vote should be. So we'll give you the options. We'll show you the information. I will alert you, like I said before, there's a inability to be precise on this, and it's not just me or Tetra Tech. Turner would say the same thing. Any other design professional who's skilled at this would understand that some of this is going to be as much gut and heart as head and numbers. So.
Always the case with major capital projects, where you're figuring out what it's going to cost over a 30-year or more time. So we understand, David.
Yeah, I just think that this is an extraordinary act of generosity on the part of Turner.
Yeah.
And I think there should be some formal expression of appreciation to Peter Davlin and to Turner for giving us this pro bono, basically.
You bet.
So we can have some kind of consensus in the board.
I think so, and since you've introduced Peter to us on this, if you'd like to draft a resolution, I think the board would altogether support it and create the appropriate occasion in which it could be delivered. So that's a very good idea.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, he placed resources wholeheartedly into this. Top quality staff, you know, he did it. So well done.
He's a tremendous friend, and we're deeply appreciative.
Does this still, so for the elementary school, this new system that we're talking about include air conditioning
Yes.
for the elementary? And
Yeah.
is air conditioning for the middle school still on the table?
It could be. You'll have to make a decision.
Depends on the money.
It's where do you stop? It's like any renovation project. You open up the wall and you decide where to stop. My guess is, based on my experience with you guys as a board and with this community, you're probably going to want to include the air conditioning in the middle school in this upcoming vote. It just makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I will say though that air conditioning the building is going to be a big part of why your energy costs go up, because you don't currently air condition a lot of this building, and now you will. So even if you just left the old system here and said we're going to air condition it somehow, you have a spike in your energy use. It would go to here no matter what.
But that would be electric energy in any case, right? There's no scenario in which
Good point. Yeah.
so.
Probably my engineer could figure out some way to do it.
With using fuel oil, yeah.
I don't think anybody would want that.
Save them the trouble.
Right.
So, Other questions for Garrett? Garrett, this is a tremendously helpful and
I hope so.
timely update. So thank you, thank your team, and for the cooperation you put into
You're
this
welcome.
with our friends at Turner. It's been very extraordinarily beneficial. So,
I'm happy to be here, thank you. You're welcome.
Thanks, Garrett.
we have now a related topic. Mr. Chardy's doing, well, Laura, you tell me.
Yes,
We're doing update on priorities.
Yes.
The last priority to be updated from our current list of priorities is facilities. Laura and Mike are going to handle that. Then we will shift focus ever so slightly and talk about, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, we will then talk about where we are in the development process for updating the priorities
Right.
going
So
forward.
we're sticking to the template we've been sticking to with all of our other presentations. With literacy was first, and we had social emotional learning and literacy. Technology. So just a quick overview for folks of what the process has been in the past, and very similar to what we're doing now. The priorities are literacy, technology, social emotional learning, and facilities for the last 3 years, and the 3 years is up, so that's why we're doing this work. How and why were they selected? It really came from community, came from our students, our high school students, board member input, and a lot of staff conversations. And we used all of that to kind of create these larger buckets of those 4 district priorities. And that brings us to who's responsible. We're all part of the story. We're all responsible for seeing these come to fruition. And we have in so many ways, whether it was through committee work, whether it was in the classrooms, having conversations with parents and community members. We've all been part of these conversations for the last 3 years, and we've made great strides. But now, again, it's 2019, and we're ready for the next round of district priorities.
So once again, this has been something that's been consistent throughout our presentations, where we do feel strongly that per our process over the course of a number of months, each of these individual groups has been integral in our research and the anecdotal evidence we've collected, and for any kind of meaningful systemic change to take place, to sustain itself, all of those groups represented are important in that process. And again, the goal is having our students becoming global citizens, but also, of course, successful graduates of their high schools.
So this is what we've done in the last presentation too, sort of giving you the superintendent's perspective, the district perspective, and then Alex will talk about the building and the principal perspective. So when we talk about budget, all of this is through collaboration with teams here, with the board, as well as administrative team and teachers and the rest of the staff. So we develop a fiscally responsible and practical PISA project, capital project, which we're talking about right now, that falls under the facilities priority. Maintaining a facility, so we're talking about on the ground, making sure that we have funds for personnel, supplies needed to run the facility, and to respond to the unexpected, such as our boiler and phone system this year. So making sure that we're prepared personnel-wise as well as fund-wise. Then we talk a lot about security, keeping the building safe, making sure the doors are locked, the alarm systems are up to date. Emergency response teams are trained with redundancy, so that there are certain members in the emergency response team that have multiple roles and responsibilities, and we have that layered as well. And then we have our mandated drills. And we also have partnership with BOCES Regional Safety Coordinator, and he helps us with our building and district plans, as well as he facilitates our emergency response teams. He also does walkthroughs through our building to make sure that the envelope is safe, for our kids and for our staff and anybody who's coming into our building. And then lastly, it's all about the conversations we have in our leadership team meetings. We meet weekly, Michael, Alex, Sue, and myself, and talk about lots of things, including the building conditions, as well as transportation, curriculum, programs, students, staff needed. So all of that is happening on a weekly basis. And then collaboratively developing summer project plans, and that's what Michael will talk about as well. So, and then on the principal's perspective.
So yes, first and foremost, as I've cited, of course, my first and foremost role is supporting, as an instructional leader, the teaching and learning. So with regards to facilities, creating spaces that are conducive for our educational setting. So that may be in the form of the flexible seating or furniture that we've already put in place throughout many of our classrooms. Also providing the appropriate tools and resources to inspire learners and also support that instruction. One example that we've discussed in our previous technology presentations would be the interactive displays installation and the training that went with it as well. As there will be some redundancy in this as well in terms of what we present, as these expectations, of course, do align. So in security, the emergency response team, which is a large, very representative group of various staff members of our school, which is important, as we had said as well in our partnership with Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES and the Regional Safety Coordinator. Also, this is important in terms of monitoring and testing our communication systems, whether it's through drilling processes, the PA system, radios, and video surveillance. And as was mentioned before, a number of meetings that we take place, of course, the weekly administrative team meetings, bi-weekly meetings that myself and Mr. Swarty take care of in terms of any kind of events that need to be coordinated for. And of course, Laura and I make sure that we take time, at least each week as well, to make sure that we are up to date with all the runnings in regards to facilities and all of the matters in the building.
Okay.
Oh, I'm up.
Introducing Michael Party, Director of Facilities.
Thanks for having me, everybody. You might not think that way, I'm still talking for 2 hours.
Please, please. I know you're kidding.
Alex, you clicking or am I? Oh, there we go. I just sold that picture to GQ magazine for their new cover. So,
I'm very
just, I'm very happy working here, and I just want to tell you basically what I do on a regular basis. Did you bring my bonbons? Oh, you did. Okay, thanks. It's my responsibility to make sure that this facilities and grounds is run in the most healthy and safety way and as efficiently as possible. So there's a lot of federal and state laws that we have to conform to, and that's helped by a lot of people: Sue, Alex, Laura, Board of Education. And part of my job, you know, it's very important for me to have a good relationship with the business manager to make sure that we're doing everything in the most efficient way possible. And believe me, you're not going to slip a penny past this woman. So, one thing that really drives my job is all the health and safety conformances, and we're very fortunate to have federal and state law agencies that are telling us what to do and having inspections all the time. And one that I really, I'm not going to say I live for, but kind of runs the way we run and try to run our maintenance in the building is the fire and safety inspections. This annual inspection is, well, actually it's done once every 11 months, and it's done by a licensed fire and safety inspector. This includes things like hood inspections in the kitchens every 6 months. We have to get them certified. We have fire extinguisher inspections annually. Plus, we are looking at the maintenance staff on a monthly basis just to make sure stickers are still attached, that they're still full and charged. Ongoing is emergency and emergency lights and exit lights. You know, the batteries die over time, so we're putting in new batteries all the time. And they're easy to test, and you push the button. If it stays lit, then you're okay. If it doesn't, well, time to change the battery. The fire alarm devices need to be checked. These are things like the pull stations. We have smoke heads, we have heat heads. All these things are also have to be inspected annually. And we also have to have evacuation and lockdown drills. We're required to have 12 of these drills a year. 8 of them have to be before December 31st from the new school year. 4 of them have to at least be lockdown drills. Going from health and safety, we also have a HARE, which is asbestos. My staff, the cleaning and maintenance staff, is required to have annual training on asbestos awareness. BOCES does come in and do this. I used to do it in some of the schools before, but BOCES has a real good program. They come in and they do that in the beginning of the year for us. We have our triennial inspections. Once every 3 years, we're required to have an outside company come in and inspect our asbestos. That was done today, as a matter of fact. Now that has to be submitted to SED by September 1st, so we're well ahead of our time frame here. I'll get the reports back next week, and hopefully by the week after that we'll have that submitted. Okay, we have our NYSER. NYSER is our insurance reciprocal. They come in once a year and they give recommendations. They kind of piggyback on the fire and safety inspections, and we have a very good working relationship with NYSER. They're very good. They come in and give the recommendations, and they're very useful to me. They help me for my fire inspections. Click. Okay, we have a hazardous communication program. That's right to know. All the people that work in our facilities have the right to know what chemicals we're using in the building. They have a right to know the dangers of any of these chemicals, if there are any, and they have a right to know of what to do if they become exposed to these chemicals. Outside my office, I have a book called Safety Data Sheets on it. It's a big yellow envelope. It's right out there for everybody to see. Anytime anybody wants to look at it, they can. It has the products that we use in this building. It has any potential hazards, what to do if you're exposed to it. And we have to have staff right to know training annually also. It's not a long training. They just have to know that we do have a program going where they can go and look in the facilities office for any of these chemicals. We have the Hartford steam boil inspections. They come in annually. They're coming in June 10th this year. They like to look at our boilers just to make sure they're operating functioning good. And they work in conjunction with NYSER. I have the Department of Health coming in. They come in to check the kitchen annually. I have water testing. We have daily water testing. They come in the county comes in to see how much water we're using. Monthly, they check the bacteria, see if there's any bacteria in our water. We have the boiler water tested monthly also. That's to ensure that we're using the proper amount of anti-corrosive chemicals in there. They check the water. The more, if you keep the levels at the right pH, then the pipes won't corrode as much. Your equipment should last longer. Every 5 years, we work on a building condition survey. This helps us on capital projects. It helps us try to focus on the budget and where we need to spend our money. Also, we have hazardous waste disposal. People don't realize, but like these light bulbs that are not LEDs have hazardous waste in them. So we have to keep them, and they have to be marked universal waste. Can't have them for more than a year. We have to dispose of them properly, keep manifests. Transportation, there's just so many conformances in there. I'm not going to go into all of them, but we have DOT semi-annual inspections for our vehicles, and there's compliance for every driver. You have your annual physicals. You have your health checks by the doctor. You have driving tests, oral tests, written tests. Tomorrow they're doing physical activity to make sure we can go up and down the bus fast enough, jump out the back. We have good software that helps me track each one of our drivers and when they are due for these tests. I try to keep everybody in the same month so that when the 19A inspector comes in, it's more efficient, get everybody done at once, and it seems to be working. Click. Within transportation, I have to schedule routes for in and out of district runs. This also includes the summer, where we do have some students that go to schools in the summer. So we have to configure all the transportation for that. We schedule class trips. We do a fair amount of trips down to the marsh. We're fortunate enough to have the Garrison Arts Center locally. We have Clearwater. We do some of these local trips, and that takes a lot of coordination. I have to check the billing from the busing contractor just to make sure that we're not getting charged for days that we might have had a snow day or whatever, to make sure that that billing is accurate. We have to schedule maintenance for all the vehicles. Hudson Valley helps us with that. I drive as needed. I like driving the bus. I'm in there, on the average, I'd say about once a week. And I also have to coordinate sports trips with the athletic director. Grounds, pretty basic really. We prepare the fields for sporting events. That's lining the fields. We have to mow grass, plow, shovel, and salt. We do our spring cleanup where a lot of limbs are falling off all over the place, raking up. We have our fall cleanup where, again, leaves. We have to keep them out of storm drains and things like that. Now, one thing that's very important is also playground inspections. This is important because obviously we don't want our children hurt, but also NYSER wants us doing that and keeping logs of this. We have to keep the mulch at certain heights. So we go out there on pretty much a daily basis just to run around, make sure there's nothing, broken glass, that type of stuff out there. monthly we go out there with our logs and check the chains and everything else on there, any moving parts, make sure everything's functioning properly. Buildings, establish cleaning sections. That's Mandy in there with our, that's a great vacuum, by the way. That's, I find it a lot more efficient than sweeping. You can go into a classroom, get under the computers with that, it gets all the dust up a lot easier than sweeping. Sweeping spreads dust.
Like Ghostbusters.
Yeah, that's what it looks like, Ghostbusters, right. You have to train the cleaners. You have to order supplies. I have to observe the building, do walkthroughs, and make sure that if I need contractors, get bids from the contractors. We have to coordinate our summer cleaning. We do a semi-annual filter change just to ensure that we have good air quality. We have to, I have to coordinate ongoing functions within the school, like, for example, the youth climate, after-school functions, the PTA programs, as well as any outside building use, like even on the weekend, like we're having the softball tournament this weekend. For example, tonight we had AAU basketball in there. We have CYO basketball during the winter time. So all that going on and coordinating that with any of our spring concerts or winter concerts or any other activities that we have. So now I'm going to go into the projects we did this year. The projects we're going to probably do this summer and then look at the future. We had sections replacing boiler number 1 this year. That boiler room's in great shape right now. It's the piping that comes back to it that's not in great shape. We replaced a lot of actuator motors. Actuator motors control our univents, the dampers opening, closing, letting in outside air. When the actuator's not functioning properly, you're not getting enough heat or you're not getting enough, you might be overheating the building. Usually when an actuator fails, it fails in the open position, which means you're overheating a room. It's uncomfortable for the kids. The air quality is not as good, so we replace a lot of those. We put a lot of new playground mulch up in the new playground. We added a little bit to some of the other playgrounds. Gym floors resurfaced. We try to do that every year. What I mean by resurface, it's the floor is just screened, just lightly going over with a little screen, and then we put a couple more coats of polyurethane over it. And it's better to do that every year at a very minimal cost, because if you don't do that every year, within 4 or 5 years, you're going to need to spend a big cost, like $30,000, to go and sand and repaint and everything else. So it's better to do a nice slow maintenance on it once a year. We changed some of our well controllers. I don't know if anybody knows, but we're having problems, and I've heard it's been for a long time, we were losing water pressure in the building. When the water pressure loses, the toilets start flushing because there's not enough pressure to keep them closed. So, and then the more toilets that are flushing, the pressure gets low, and all of a sudden, boom, there's no pressure. But we found a couple of problems between one of the control boards and an electrical issue. We finally got both companies here together, an electrical company and the well company. And they got to the bottom of it, and everything's been great since. But it took a lot of pressure off me, because between the heat, worrying about the heat this winter, and worrying about whether we're going to have water, I was losing my mind for a while. I also coordinated with the IT department and the outside vendors to put in the new Wi-Fi system. Okay, upcoming projects. A couple of things that need to be done. The roof repair over the old section, over like the art, mostly over the drama room. There's been some annoying leaks in there since I've gotten here. I've had people come in, they seem to think they patch it, we seem to think they patch it. Comes back, we can't quite figure out where it's from. That roof seems to have a couple of layers of shingles on it. Shingles are falling off, we put them back, they fall off again. So we need some repair up there. The stairway and stone wall repair up going to the parking lot on the north side of the gym. The stone wall's falling apart, and in my opinion, it's becoming a little unsafe. Kids like to run up and down it, and when stones are falling off it, that's not too good. Some of the stone there is a little uneven. when people are walking on it, some people are catching heels in there, some people are catching their ankle. So I did get some pricing from Roger Cherico, his name is, and I had another company come in from Cold Spring also, and I do have prices. I want to go over them with the leadership team. Well, one thing that needed to be done last year, we tried to. That picture there shows it. That playground across the street, Nicer's not too happy with us. There's no more mulch in there, and it needs to be dug out. So we were planning on last July digging it out. However, everybody knows what the weather's been like since then. It's been raining. We can't get big trucks across the field, otherwise we're going to rip up our field. We were planning on doing it over the winter when everything froze. Okay, we'll go when it's frozen. Well, we had a freeze, thaw. It wasn't conducive this winter. I was out there today. It was actually a lot better out there today. So hopefully this summer we can get to that. We need to add mulch to that playground after we dig it out, and add some more mulch to some of these back playgrounds. And again, gym floor needs to be resurfaced again. Future projects, solar, have to look into it. It's time. I mean, especially if we're going to be looking into this new system, if that's going to be an all-electrical system. We'll have to see. I think one asset that this school has that's very valuable is that field across the street. Unfortunately, that field across the street doesn't have great drainage. And it's been a rough year and a half with all the water. Picture was taken about 2 weeks ago, and that's over by the willow trees in the playground. But that's usual for a lot of the field. We're having problems even just getting out there with the lawnmower. I think the gym classes can make a lot more use of that field if we have good drainage. So I think down the road, that's a project we really need to look into. Great for the community, great for the kids. Front entrance cement coming down the main stairs, there's a lot of uneven spots. I think we need to look into repairing that. And now I just want to say thank you to the Board of Education. You guys have done a great job with the budget, as long as our district clerk has, and so has Sue, of course. She really works hard in that. Laura, Alex, and I just, what's his name there? Garrett stole my line. I wanted to say the 3-to-1 thing. I told him, but he stole it from me. And he left before I could talk to him. So it just shows that the community is behind you, and that makes me really feel good. I think that's a good thing. I'm very fortunate to work with a leadership committee that I have, Laura, Sue, and Alex, who support me tremendously. We have a lot of meetings, discuss everything. They're very open. They let me give my opinions, whether they like them or not. Usually they don't. But Alex, I meet with every other week. We go over a lot of things in the building. He's very helpful with me with all these conformances with health and safety. He makes sure stuff's not in the hallway, fire exits are open. He helps me also. I have a staff that is wonderful. They don't take sick days. They hardly ever take sick days. We're very fortunate to have the staff that I have. Mandy and Kathy have a very tough run in the morning, special needs run. Do it with a smile on their face every day. They're great. I have Mark DeCaro, who's a new addition to our family. He's always there when I need him. You need him for snow, he's there. Mark, can you clean somebody's section tonight? Never tells me no. Randy and Jeff, what can I say? They each have 25,000 square feet to clean a night. Now, let's put that in perspective. 25,000, let's say you have a 4,000 square foot home, which is a big home. That's like cleaning 6 homes a day. And there's a lot more traffic here than in your home. At least I think there is. And, last but not least, I have Brian. And I can't say enough words about Brian. He is a man of many talents. Electrical, plumbing, carpentry, just his overall intelligence, and he knows what he's doing on the job. I think he would be able to do the facilities job in a heartbeat. He's very good at what he does. And I just want to say thank you to everybody in the community that we work for.
Thank you. Very thorough. Questions from
Yeah, Mike, you talked about the lighting and the hazardous aspects of the the bulbs that we have now.
Yes.
Is it possible, and does it make sense to try and to replace a lot of them now with LED?
I'm already doing that. They now have LED bulbs just like this. We get them in Home Depot. They're pretty cheap. You don't have to change ballasts or anything. So I put a lot in Laura's office. I put some in the elementary hallway. I wanted to see how they all work in lighting. So we're saving money with those, and they're not hazardous waste. Yeah, we already started doing it. I keep them. Any light bulbs like this I buy now are going to be LEDs.
Can you replace the whole building with LED?
We could, certainly.
Well, that's on the,
Yeah, on the
so
capital
work list
project.
for.
Depends on the-
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great product.
Other questions for Mike? What's with the, speaking of the ball field, the 90 field, there is that, or is there still, that lacrosse rebound screen that was donated
Oh, is that what that is in
many
the
years?
back?
That's my
Yeah.
question. Well done. Is there any reason why that's not in use?
No, I
Or is
didn't
it,
know
or let me
what-
put that, let me frame the question differently. Is it in use at all? And if it's not, since we have a lacrosse team and we have could it be made, put into serviceable use?
You know, I will talk to the athletic director about that. I didn't even know what it was. He just told me.
It was very generously donated by a member of the community who was a parent at the time. And it was used for some period and then fell slowly into disuse. And the question is that a situation that should be remedied? If we're going to do work on that, on the 90 field drainage or otherwise, that ought to be part of I would think that ought to be part of the picture. It could be an asset for us.
I think both of those teams are going to Howden.
It remains an asset.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah.
Underutilized,
Yeah.
in fact,
It's
not
there.
utilized at all. So,
Yeah, it's there.
anyway, other questions for Mike?
I have one quick question. You said, who comes and measures how much water is used?
The health department requires we keep the numbers. We have a private company that comes in, measures it every day. Very simple to do. It goes out to the boiler room with it.
I wonder why that is.
You didn't know that?
No, that I never know. Most of the other stuff I know.
Yeah, if you have wells, you're required to have, keep accurate records of how much water you use daily. We use about 1,700 gallons a day.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Laura, that's the update on, so that is the last of the updates on current priorities.
Correct.
My understanding is that now you and Alex are going to take us through a preliminary look ahead at what the recommendations are for
Right.
upcoming.
So I just want to
updated
thank
projects.
Michael Twardy as well. He's one of the hardest working men and committed to this little district and all the people in it. He sends us texts 4 o'clock in the morning to tell us that there's traffic or snow or slippery roads. Takes pictures of the full moon and just kind of makes us laugh and keeps us safe from home, from coming to school and going home. So thank you. You're a pleasure to work with, and you're So yes, just what you were saying, Ray, is we've spoken about literacy, we've spoken about SEL, our social emotional learning work, we've spoken technology, and lastly with facilities. So thank you. So here we are with our findings. Again, before. At the beginning of the presentation, spoke about who we spoke with. We spoke with board members, we spoke with community members and parents. You were all there, actually. So thank you for your input. Administration, almost all of our staff. We have a couple more, a handful that we want to circle back to. Our 8th graders, our high school students in Haldane and O'Neill, and student government is working on speaking with students K through 7. So we'll have that for the next, to help inform further. So findings. So we'd love for this to just sort of be a conversation. There's nothing set. These are just ideas that came from all of these folks that we spoke with. And these were the ones that came up the most. There are lots of things that people brought to the table, maybe once, maybe twice, but these were the ones that we kept seeing reoccurring, the trends and the patterns. And those are what we used last time to create the big buckets and then kind of create the bones and then start putting the meat on those bones. So we spoke about academic, what do we want our graduates to be able to do when they leave us? And so to find that out, what is it that we want to teach and what do we want them to learn? And we were thinking, and along with lots of conversations with folks, about an academic roadmap. where are we going and how are we getting there, and how are we measuring our success? What are the tools that we need to develop to monitor success and make revisions along the way, and not wait until the end and say, oh, this worked, this didn't work, we'll do better next year. But making sure that we're monitoring all along the way. And this goes across all content areas and all of our district priorities. And then academic alignment across grades. That was spoken about as well. So vertical and horizontal alignment. That we want to make sure that there's cohesiveness from first grade to second grade to third grade, from kindergarten to first, so that there's repeated skills and that become more complex over time, so that kids can master them. There was a lot of talk about the concentration on math. We've given a lot of personnel, time, funding to literacy, and we're gaining, we're making great strides in that area, and we'd like to continue to grow that as well. But in the meantime, we want to look at math as well. Look at our RTI, look at our, do we need an interventionist to support front load in the earlier grades? Do we need to look at our resources that we're using, the textbooks we're using, the online resources we're using? So it's just what we did with literacy, we'd like to do with math. Continue with words of advice. And I know when we spoke at the last board meeting regarding literacy, we wanted to concentrate more on writing as well as setting benchmarks. How do we know that our students are making progress? And when they're not, what are the interventions that we're going to recommend based on the data that we're collecting? We'd also like to concentrate in the middle school, in ELA, and bring in the special ed teachers into the literacy work as well for the units of writing and reading. Then there was a conversation among many of us about, is there a need for an in-house literacy specialist or a curriculum developer? And then more DEAR time. That was also during our literacy presentation. How do we expand the DEAR week to spread throughout the school year? So there was a time when we just had School Forest Day, and we said, we don't want to just say it's School Forest Day, we want School Forest Year. So we started with Forest Fridays, providing BOCES resources to teachers. They could have instructors come and bring them into the forest and do experiments, even mindfulness, so that we are spreading our beautiful forest throughout the year and we're making use of it.
Now looking at how we can further support many of the ways we've done so over the course of the past few years. That would be an inclusion of consistent vertically and horizontally aligned resources so that all of our teachers and our specialists are consistent in terms of the language and what kind of content we're providing to our students. Standardization of the lesson structures as well goes along with that. And then making sure that we're being consistent, whether it's with our STAR 360 Renaissance tools, whether it's with any of our Fountas and Pinnell, with any of these tools that we have for data analysis, to make sure that we are continuing to provide the appropriate professional development so we, as educators, all make meaningful use of that data to inform our instructional practice. There was conversation or mention of electives and intensive for students, and my understanding is at one time that did exist. However, it for one reason or another has not been in existence, but there is still very much an interest expressed by those we spoke with. So something we may look into how we could reactualize that. I like this is.
It would help me to understand the priorities if I understood what isn't happening now. Right? In other words, this is the reality today. These are the priorities that you've got. So, for instance, the whole idea of like regular monitoring of progress, is that not happening now?
We are. I think we can make it more systemic and systematic in looking at the data. So making sure that during collab meetings, we're looking at student data in real time, and being able to give targeted support. Interventionist is definitely doing that right now, but we'd like to grow those practices out to teachers across the grades. So we're monitoring
So
through
it's kind of happening now, but
STAR 360, Fountas and Pinnell. But often the question is when we have presentations is, how are we monitoring social and emotional learning? How are we monitoring literacy? How are we monitoring our technology? So we want to make sure that we have these, developing these tools, or have these tools and making effective use of them school-wide, district-wide.
because you don't think you are now.
I think we're doing a very good job in literacy right now with Fountas and Pinnell and STAR 360, and then we use our state testing as well. But I think we probably want to look at technology, making sure like what are the choices that we're making around instructional online tools and the hardware that we're purchasing. How are we showing that it enhances, it strengthens and deepens the learning for students.
Okay, so henceforth, why don't you give us a sense of what you don't think you've got now and what you hope to add to it? Can you do that? Is that, it would just make more clear.
So for example, and I don't disagree with David. For example, on the previous slide, we said math has come up for the concentration on math. My recollection is that when we said literacy as a priority, it was because we saw over several years a steady and, in some cases, alarming decline in our standardized test results in literacy. So we said, okay, we'll make literacy a priority. And we did. And we have seen results. We've seen a steady uptick as a result against all the relevant metrics for measuring literacy. Now we said, okay, we have to think about a concentration on math. Is it because, since we've shifted all that attention and resources towards literacy, we've seen an erosion in our math performance? And that's why we want to focus on math? Or is there some other reason that math is moving to the forefront in this discussion of priorities? That's, I think, a concrete example, I hope, is a concrete example of the kind of discussion, if you want to have a discussion that would most benefit the board. Where are we now? And in light of where we are, what do we believe our priorities have to be or should be going forward?
I think that some of the function of, I think, the wonderful work that we've done in the time and the resources and the professional development that we've invested in literacy, I think is a function of, for lack of a better word, you don't know what you don't know. Or I think it isn't necessarily a lack of performance, I think, on our students and our staff, because as Laura had said, we're really making quite good use of.
It's stipulated. We're making great progress in literacy.
Right.
And so we got that in the literacy priority update. And we recognize it, we applaud the faculty, we applaud the administration in the way they brought the tools to bear. That's great. If we're saying, so what I'm saying now is if we're saying math is now going to be an area of focus, the question is going to be why necessarily? And if there's not a deficiency, but we think it can still be an enhancement, how so?
And I think, and what I was pointing to is that I think the consistency of the shared language and the alignment that we've seen as a result of our work in literacy, that I think a lot of our teachers have now seen, well, that would benefit us and our students greatly if we were to try to attempt and use the same amount of time and resources in the area of mathematics. And I know that's broad brush, so to speak, but I also think more specifically with regards to the use of specific data and tools that we've had, for example, Star Renaissance use and application for a little over 2 years. However, it wasn't until this past year when we had some on-site training, I attended some professional development, that our team began to realize or say, this would have better informed our instruction previously. Even though we've had access to this, we didn't truly understand how it could optimize our instruction. So again, that's tangentially, I think, related to how this could inform math, but that's a more specific example of something that we've had that we realized we could make better use of, per our conversations with the board too, of the data that we have available to us, how we can optimize
Just
it.
on that, just with our conversations with teachers too, they have noticed things about some deficiencies or skills that deficiencies in skills that some of our students have. So we have front-loaded literacy intervention in the younger grades, and Julie Green, who's our interventionist, her caseload is heavy now, and with the help of possibly another interventionist who focus on math to take care of those students who are lacking in skills and content area. Some of them just need a little lift, and others need more consistent work and fluency. I think some multiplication. There were a few pieces that they were saying that if they were able to support students in a more targeted manner in the younger years, they would have more success as they gained, as they moved along in the grades.
Fair enough. So,
and also they said about the modules. The modules came out to engage New York, and it was sort of mandated when the new standards came out. And so now they're ready to sort of use them maybe as a foundation, but what are the other resources out there that could be more engaging, maybe more project-based, maybe more inquiry and problem solving that is more real world related. So they're very energized and excited to do exactly what we did with literacy and do it in math.
So we both of work, and again, the wording I would attribute to Laura, the librarian, with the esteem attitude we have it's been noted too that with some of the adjustments we've made in terms of the, while the library is readily accessible, some people have noted that they would like to see perhaps whether it's more strategic or just refocus our energy on how it's currently designed. We are fortunate enough to have a wonderful partnership with Desmond Fish Library and are in the midst of working on that school to library path to really make use of that partnership for our K-5 students. But we would like to look at how we can make sure that that's readily accessible to our students now and also to integrate with the current push for STEAM and science and engineering and technology and math. World language, we've had that discussion on several occasions in terms of the adjustments we've made in this year and how they work, but then also some of the deficiencies we I think have noted, and that was in our conversations, I think, as we went to the high schools as well, just to some of the benefits some of our former students felt as a result of having that early FLES program.
I'm sorry, what's world language? I apologize.
Spanish, yes, which it's now referred to as world language. So. But thank you for noting to clarify.
Why? Why is it called world language?
Sorry?
Why is it called world language?
It was referred to commonly as foreign language, but that is actually the current adjustment and standardization
Since we
of...
only have Spanish as a
Spanish it
world
is, yes.
language, let's-
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Simple, Spanish. And then finally, just evaluating the existing phonics programs, just from our early elementary constituents and abroad too, just to look at how we're building those basic building blocks of literacy in the early grades, and again, looking at what kind of resources we're providing and could we provide.
So while we're on the curriculum, before we go to the next one, I mean, just to make, and to really to make this more conversational.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff going on in this country at both the elementary level and at the middle school level. So is there any program in New Jersey, in Connecticut, in California, in Chicago, in Paris, that you guys look at and say, gee, I wish we had that here? Any place.
I think we actually have...
Go ahead.
I think we have some wonderful resources right in our very own neck of the woods. We actually have just been fortunate enough to be accepted to the third cohort of the Yale Ruler Model, which has been a program, again, under the next slide of the social emotional learning, fits nicely with our district priorities. A number of our neighboring districts, colleagues that we've spoken with and who as well have spoken highly to that programming as a way to begin the identification of emotions and coping mechanisms, but start...
Mr. Levine, I'm asking about curriculum, not social and emotional. I'm saying, is there anything at the curricular level that's happening any place in this country that you really admire and respect and would like to see happening here at Garrison?
Well, I would argue that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that they're all related, academic, social, emotional, so whole child is what we focus on, so I could see that unless you're looking for something else.
I just want a concrete example of something that's happening in, Teaneck, New Jersey, or Palo Alto, or something that...
I don't know.
Did you have one in mind?
You guys are the... I just want a conversational discussion about district priorities, and so this is a very rich area, education, innovation, right? And so I'm just wondering whether there's something that's caught your eye that's happening wherever that you would like to implement here.
I can't tell you a specific place, but there is some interest here and throughout, in many schools, is design thinking, which is sort of aligned to project-based learning. It's real-world skills, figuring out solutions to problems. There are a number of our teachers who went to a professional development in PNW, and they came back really jazzed. It's a new way of thinking of sort of how to unpack skills and content in an engaging, real-world fashion. And I think that it stems from their interest, and I have a little bit of experience in that area. That I think that would be nice to grow and foster and see where that takes us.
I'm attending that two-day workshop in the summer as well, so to see if that might be something that's fitting as well.
Let me suggest, I don't know that we're going to get to a definitive answer to David's question tonight, but since this is a conversation about a preliminary look at how we're getting through and identifying our next set of priorities, that when we get to the point of actually having a final set of recommendations, where appropriate, if you can point to programs that we'd like to implement here that we have come to know are successful, innovative and successful, not necessarily just innovative, it would help us understand why this particular priority and absent our own set of evidence, at least be able to point to some other places where this particular mode of addressing a priority has proved to be successful.
Thanks.
Give us examples. So, at the risk, so that we don't belabor this particular point, why don't we move on to the next? Assuming you're finished. Oh, yeah,
Yes.
okay, go ahead. SEL.
Can I take that one?
So just continuing, so looking at not only for ourselves, we did speak a little bit about, which is a few bullets down, the value of intergenerational learning, which already exists in a lot of ways, shapes, and forms in the school. We have unique opportunities here to align or partner our K-5 with our 6-8. So looking at ways that we can allow our secondary students more opportunities in their own learning, to offer that to our younger students. Developing social and emotional learning goals, as we've talked about, making use of these assessment tools and then clarifying exactly how we're measuring. This is a difficult area to measure. We can have anecdotal evidence, but to have some kind of numeric or quantitative values assigned to this would be a value. So that's something that we are looking into and speaking with our partners through TCIS and seeing if they may have some kind of identifiable ways of measuring that have been proven to be successful. We'd also discussed the reimagining of the town hall meetings, as was expressed from some feedback. More outdoors to support our social emotional learning, as I mentioned, the intergenerational learning, and continuing to strengthen our data analysis, and then looking at professional development opportunities for our staff. Myself and Laura really tried to take as much advantage of the resources locally and speaking with our colleagues, whether they be a neighboring district or elsewhere. So looking at those things, whether they be throughout the summer or to bring in-house, as we've done on many occasions.
Can you clarify the second bullet point, develop social emotional learning goals? What would a goal be? What does that, I keep struggling with the difference between priorities and goals and how to break it down. So to determine, social emotional has been a priority for the last 3 years. Looks like maybe pushing it forward the next 3. How do you set the goals for that, and how do you determine that it was successful?
And measurable, yes. And I think that's one thing or one aspect that feedback was expressed as much as when we develop individualized education plans or IEPs, that we look at setting academic goals, and they're fairly familiar to all of us. So in that realm, we've looked at how can we expand that thinking to that if we're setting these goals are really having it of value and importance in our curriculum, in our day-to-day, then how can we enumerate that or standardize it? So whether it's developing empathy or having to do with our 3Bs or however that might be noted, whether it's in a formalized document or just in the classroom setting, to really more clearly, to your point, identify it, but then also figure out an accurate way to measure its success as we would do with any kind of academic plan.
So, as just an example, I may be wrong on this, but we rolled out PBIS, right, as a pilot project, and making some assessments now and adjustments as necessary. There were presumably consultants or others who were out there who introduced us to PBIS, shared the model, helped us define or design it for the Garrison School, and roll it out. Am I right? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Those consultants came in basically with a pitch. It said PBIS is a good thing if you have an SEL as a goal. We know it works because, and that gets to Courtney's question. If there are vendors out there who are approaching us and with programs like PBIS, for example, it would seem to me part of their pitch must be, we know this thing works because it's delivered these results here, here, and here. That, to my mind, that would demonstrate, that gets us a lot closer to being able to say, we recognize this is a softer subject than measuring literacy or fluency in a foreign language. But there are ways to measure it. One of them with PBIS is, and here's the example that our PBIS consultants have shared with us. If that's there, let's make that part of the next iteration of this discussion.
I have sort of that middle school children and high school children are susceptible to depression and loneliness because of social media use and screen time use. And it mentioned in the article that New York State requires a curriculum on healthy choices in smartphone use and internet use. And so I had mentioned that previously as a conjunction of our technology goals and social emotional learning. But I'd be interested in programming for children on on how to use social media and devices in a healthy way. And one of the things is that all of the apps that the young children use, they have reward systems that spur dopamine in the mind. So, my son is using Epic, which is great. He's reading things, but he gets little rewards, and it's like an indoctrination into yeah. So, and I know that these different apps that the children use are helping them to learn, but they do have these troubling dopamine triggering reward systems, and I'd like for the school, for programming to exist that talks about this, that children are going to have to be mindful of what the app designers and the companies are doing to get us to buy things, to continue looking, to binge watch, to whatever. But it's one of the biggest issues to help children retain their minds and their awareness, because you can just get lost. Yeah.
Thank you. So these were some other conversations around technology, just making sure that it's still priority. We'd like to focus on the instructional online tools that we have purchased. And so Nancy has been working with teachers in teaching them, training them, and implementing. But again, it's that other measurable piece. How do we know that what we're purchasing and spending our time teaching our students and teachers is working? So monitoring that productive use of instructional online tools. And I think you bring a good point to that social emotional piece, and that can be built in that very nicely. Safety came up, just always a priority. We want our kids to always feel safe, and when they feel safe, they can access learning. And so the SRO, the school resource officer or security company, came up often within our conversations with community and staff. There are times when our building could be a little tighter in security. After school programs, when we have evening events, we're very careful during the day, but just something that some folks brought to the table. And then taking care of our new staff support. That was across the board in many of our conversations. It's like, what are we doing intentionally to support our staff? Not just a welcome and a hello and here's your classroom, your keys and your ID, but does that include a handbook? More meetings with administration and talking about the nuts and bolts, about pedagogy. What are some things that you're struggling with? How can we, as a new teacher team, help solve problems and provide solutions? As well as making use of our experts in the building, having scheduled intervisitations with our master teachers and learning from them, sitting in there and saying, okay, this I can bring to my classroom right now, very timely professional development, and we have those experts here. And then offering those trainings that PNW often has, classroom management, curriculum writing. We do have words of advice. They're going to work with a couple of teachers individually over the summer to make sure that they hit the ground ready to go in the fall. So just being more intentional about taking care of our new staff and that they're okay professionally and personally and feeling good every day.
So finally, we had some findings or some wonderings rather that were shared in terms of strengthening and building relationships within the community, and mostly around the value of communication. So providing more opportunities for workshops with our parents, community members on a more regular basis about topics that are of interest. Our PTA and our other organizations have worked to do so we feel that there's value in that, and there's a expressed desire. Coffee chats with the administrative team as well, just on a regular basis, not necessarily with any particular agenda driven, but just to have an opportunity to have open conversation. Community events that we've discussed too, so whether it's those town hall meetings or the various school-wide dodgeball, scooter races, PBIS assemblies or events or what have you. Middle School 101 plan, so this was a conversation we had and some feedback from parents over the course of the year of just ways that we can ease the transition from elementary to middle school. One adjustment, I wouldn't say new thing because apparently it had actually been in action a couple of years ago, was just having an orientation for our new middle school families of some sort. That will be next week on Tuesday. Thankfully, thanks to our middle school staff who's helping to generate a kind of a nuts and bolts of middle school to help that adjustment. We had made reference to just an ease of use and access in terms of a parent or community reference guide, because we have a lot of different platforms and social media, website, and all of these places where the information is located, but oftentimes we find there's a struggle in just having perhaps one landing platform, perhaps to direct everyone that then we can branch from there. So again, streamlining our communication and making it more effective and ease of use. We mentioned the orientations. We're also looking at our open houses as well as and how they're offered in the fall, so our parents feel like they have as much time. It's such that those 8 minutes go very quickly on that open house. So it's something we don't want to create stress, but just give them an opportunity to meet and then become familiar with at least the basics of the curriculum and expectations. Team building, networking on a regular basis with our high schools. Both respective high schools have been very available to us, and when we went to have those conversations, or were kind enough to have students come and have those conversations with us. So we think more opportunities to have those for ourselves and for our students to inform our practice going forward can be nothing but good. Community mentors, and then just overall just ways that we can further strengthen our communication with the greater community.
And the fact of the matter is, I feel it, and I'm sure you do too, there's unrest in our district. We're disagreeing, we're in conflict. I think the adults are in conflict, whether it's community, parents, teachers, board, and I think these are just ways to sort of say that we are a community and we have the same focus. It's our children. We're all here for the same reason. So we shouldn't be fighting. We shouldn't be in conflict. We should be figuring out ways how we're going to model, educate, and encourage and foster the love of reading and respect and community and volunteerism, and that we need to figure it out as the adults of how we're going to model that for our kids. And I'm excited about this. I'm glad this came up. You can see it in our board meetings. You can see it, when we have teacher meetings. You can see it when we're in the community. But we need to start working together. And I think clear communication. I love the parent reference guide, because a parent came in at the last board meeting and said, I don't even know where to go to find this information. So we can make your lives easier, and that we can do great things together. We're not doing great things disjointed and angry with one another. So I think this is a very important district priority, and I think we should all be focusing on that one. That's mine. And some other findings that we thought notable and noteworthy that we may want to explore later on, or we can embed with the priorities that we determine are going to be our priorities for the next 3 years. Someone brought in later start time. Michael says no. There are a lot of moving parts to decisions like that, and a lot of research. I know Haldane has been looking at it, and a few other schools in the district, but it impacts schedules, impacts programs, impacts transportation. Excuse me. Was brought up. We were spending a lot of money on our special ed students in district and out of district. So are we making good decisions? Are there gaps that we should be filling or doing better? A climate change education, study skills, which could fall nicely under a literacy curriculum priority. Debate, which actually has that inspired him. Evaluate homework policy and practices, that came up in a board meeting and some other conversations we had. Revisit our homework help. What does that look, sound, and feel like? Are we making the right decisions for that time? Are we making it valuable and helpful to our students? Review and expand partnerships to support curriculum. So how can we have community members and parents come in who have the expertise, passion, and interest to enhance, expand, and deepen the curriculum that we have? Block scheduling was a conversation at a community parent meeting. consolidation was as well. Other programs to support social emotional, restorative justice, peer mediation, teaching tolerance programs, screen time, which you were talking about as well, that was a topic, and civic engagements. So some of them could possibly fall under the draft recommendation priorities. Which are these?
So what you'll notice too, so whereas we had most of these are either we felt that judging from our feedback that several of them, whether it's social emotional learning, technology facilities, that they were of importance to maintain or to make sure that we maintain the progress we made. We did not feel that literacy by any means that our work was done, so we reframed this priority to make sure that we were more inclusive of some of the other areas that were noted, and within those subframes would fall literacy, mathematics, and writing were specifically areas that were most immediately noted as areas to be a focus. And the last point, which we just discussed at length, is just the value or looking into building a community and building more bridges through more effective means of communication. All those, of course, are pending further discussion, and that perhaps June 12th or subsequent conversations in this forum.
So we've sort of taken you from where we've been, where we are, and possible next steps moving forward. But we wanted to sort of open it up to see, do you have ideas? I heard you want to hear more about what are programs or initiatives that are going well in other districts. So we can most definitely research that and explore that. I know that many of the programs that we advise is based on Teachers College, which is a research-based program. And it has a long history of success for students in reading and writing. But I can look into more of the design thinking.
Or just so you want to be efficient with the process. I think as a suggestion, since you asked for conversation, I would reframe that ever so slightly.
Okay.
If you've identified these are priority areas for us because, as we said earlier, here's where we are, and here's what we think we need to, why we need to change or put more focus on this thing or these things and otherwise, that's fine. We'll take the recommendation. These are the priority areas. What you then, I think, would want to do is, once you've assigned that particular area, like mathematics, as a priority, go find where mathematics and mathematical and math instruction really excels. Where people's districts or otherwise are really making substantial stand-up progress, and say, this is what we've seen, this is what we could emulate, these are the programs that are being used there, and we'd like to import and evaluate those kind of things. So I don't think we're asking to go find innovative programs for the sake of finding innovative programs. It has to be, you've identified the priorities, then find out where those similar priorities are being addressed successfully through innovative programs or whatever. So if it's being done in TNIC, to use David's example, fine, and come to us and say, we're going to address this priority this way. We're going to try to see what they did so successfully here, there, or otherwise, and import those best practices here. So I think that may be a more efficient way of going about it than simply going to find innovative programs for the sake of finding innovative programs and then trying to tie them and then back them into our priorities. In my humble.
No, I think that's correct. I just want to make sure that that's satisfying David as well. Because that makes sense, because if this is what we're determining as our priorities, and we've done a lot of research and a lot of data gathering to inform these, but is there another layer that...
Well, you don't need to belabor any of this. What I wanted to get a better sense of was where are we failing or substandard now, concretely, and where are we going, how are we going to improve based on what?
And how do we fix it?
Because what I heard was, I can't believe, do you not, to go back to monitor kids on an ongoing basis about how they're doing? Or if you don't, how don't you do that? Just be straightforward with us about where the failings are, and then tell us how you're going to fix it.
I wouldn't say that there's failings. There's always areas in need
Well,
of
all right, find
improvement.
another euphemism for it, than doing less than we could. Yes, that's what.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily sure. I understand. I think we all understand David's point. I'm not sure I would frame it quite the same way. I don't think you have to making various comparisons between what we're doing and other districts to say, these are areas where we can improve. These are areas where we've shown progress, and now we want to focus somewhere else. And here's why. That's a perfectly good frame for us. It's, by the way, it's not at all different from the same frame we asked for when we did this exercise 3 years ago. Just tell us where we are. Give us a professional judgment about where we are and why we need these particular areas, and I would keep them small. 5 is a lot if you, and by the way, if 5 with 3 areas under number 1 brings you to 8 priorities, I'd be suspicious of a presentation at 8 priorities on it. If your sense is that we've invested sufficient in the next 3 years with respect to our hardware and professional development, then it's altogether appropriate if you want to take technology off of that. We've got a good foundation, technology foundation. Then take that off. Don't come back with it. That's a suggestion.
Isn't that, I guess I took it that the blue ones are the ones you wanted to work on, and that you felt the other ones were being dealt with already. Did I misunderstood that, the slide?
These would all still, to Ray's point, of continue as our priorities. The ones that are in gray are currently
the ones that we're doing already.
Yes.
I just want to reinforce what Ray said, because it captures what we can't talk about priorities without knowing where we are right now in much more granular detail. I mean, just much more straightforward with data or with some kind of evidence that tells us where we are and therefore why we need to up our game.
Yeah, I understand this is a preliminary presentation. It's a draft. It's meant to spark conversation. Well done in that regard. But I think we need a more focused framework for the next level of communication. If you're going to come to us and say, these are the priority areas for the next 3 years, the whys have to be a lot more concisely and carefully articulated. So I don't doubt, with all of the input sourcing that you guys did, everything's going to be suggested. Now it's time to move beyond that and do make some very critical judgments about where we're going to spend our time and effort.
Well, that's with any in my previous experience in other districts, whether you call it strategic planning or district priorities, that this has been part of the process, and I will say that this district put together, I think, and I don't want to speak, I will speak for myself, I think it's very representative of what our staff and what our parents and what our students would like to see. I agree it's not to the degree of specificity that we like, but we need to begin in a place where our community agrees on the starting points, and then as in backwards design and curriculum development, you start with the essential question, a broad-based question, and then you drill down, so to speak, to the more specific aspects of how do you implement the lesson and what are the specific assessments, that's any best practice in curriculum development, and that's essentially what we're doing in my estimation here. So I think that was just to clarify.
I am all for securing community, a variety of inputs. But one, it's important to do. 2, we're appreciative as professional educators and administrators have to be brought to bear, and it's not enough to say, this is all the stuff we've heard, this is what the community wants. Your professional judgment and what the community wants may align, and that's fine, but if it doesn't, we're relying on you to say, these are the priorities we think, in light of everything we've heard from all of our input sources, have the highest priority, and where we're going to ask the board to devote resources.
That was the question I wanted to ask, which was, you did a huge amount of research, this is a huge amount of data, there's a lot of interesting concepts, any one of those you could pick and develop for a year, as the leaders of the district. What do you think? What, if you had to pick one thing, like what is something that you really want to, that you're passionate about, that you want to see develop in school? And
How do you choose? I think curriculum development is always a priority. I always feeling of alignment across grades, so that we're building skills and content and complexity, but that takes a lot of work on the teacher's end, so it takes a lot of special, professional development. I don't know if you can really, I mean, we did take literacy, social, emotional, and technology, and that was, I think, what we felt were the pillars that we wanted to start building. I feel like, I mean, it's a good question, Courtney, because I don't even know if I can choose one. I think they're all important. Community is super important. Alex?
I would say in the area, I agree with our feedback, specifically in the area of writing, which I know we've had discussions on here, and the value of finding some ways of really making sure that we have the appropriate tools of measurement and assessments in place, but then also the value of social emotional learning, which I would agree on our community assessment as that being of importance.
Okay, well, all right.
I have one more. So in one of the community meetings that I attended, one of the things I said was that we're in this place that has been preserved by people, and no matter what anybody's political affiliation is in this community, people value the environment, and that's a big reason they live here. And I mentioned there's an amazing website called Teaching the Hudson Valley. What if we created a curriculum that everything relates to the environment of the Hudson Highlands? So when you're learning math at certain grade levels, you're learning about trade on the Hudson River. You're doing math related to sturgeon in the Hudson River. You're writing about people who lived here in the past, people, you know, whatever. But everything is place related. It would make this place unique. And you know, one of the big challenges we have going forward is our kids are going to have to be stewards of the earth. And so if we could relate the whole curriculum to the environment and the outdoors in this specific place, which is so crazy in its history and complexity, it would be wonderful. So that is my comment.
Anything else from the board for? We purposely put public comment tonight at the end of these two substantive conversation areas. It's not to suggest that the lengthy agenda we have following this is not substantive, but probably not as interesting to the members of the public who are here with us tonight. So, as you'll see in the agenda, the floor is now open for public comment. Yes, Mike?
I apologize.
After Courtney, and then after Mike. The floor will be open for public comment. If you would.
Sorry, Mike, I just have one quick question. So for the next presentation, you guys are gonna synthesize.
Yeah.
What can we what can we expect from that? Is it identifying the priorities and within that the goals and how you're going to get there? I imagine this is not just a one conversation thing. But so that we don't have to have a whole lot of back and forth. I'm just curious what we can expect from the next meeting.
More of the rationale as to why.
Yeah,
we're
and
choosing
I
these.
guess how
And
the
the draft
priorities
plan.
are going to be achieved, what the plan is.
All right, so
Is that-
for the purposes of the next presentation, let me tell you what we don't need.
Okay.
We don't need to hear the constellation of input sources that you availed yourselves of to get to this. We got it. We need an identification of the key priorities. We need a statement of why those priorities are relevant to us, what reasons they're being identified in light of the current state of play within the district, and to the extent it's possible to do it, to point to those programs techniques, strategies, or whatever that are going to help advance that. Obviously, that will take shape over time, but it does not have to be a tremendously detailed. It doesn't have to be a detailed presentation in the way this is detailed, as long as it's detailed in the way I think that you've heard from us
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
far.
And I think that's appropriate. That's where we are in the process.
Good. Well,
I mean, it's
we
still-
recognize this is iterative, we
Iterative,
recognize this is a draft, so,
Yeah.
Michael, 30 seconds.
I talked about my job, but there's, all the people that helped me do my job, I forgot two very important sets of people. Number one, the support staff, they look over my Excel spreadsheets and, right, Beth? And help out with that. And also the teachers and the teacher aides support me in trying to meet all these conformances with fire safety. They make sure that the windows aren't blocked. They just work with me, and I think we're lucky to have educators that really care about everybody in this building.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're very thoughtful tonight.
Thanks, Mike.
The floor is open for public comment. Board member-elect Torme. Sure you still want to do this, right? I don't mean the public
I've
comment
been
either.
curling up with my state logbook and I love it. Hi, I'm Sarah Torme. I have a second grader and a third grader. My question, based on the presentations that we just saw, is rather specific in terms of the curriculum development. Do you see adding personnel and positions as part of this? Because my understanding, this is based on my children's experiences and what I heard tonight, was one individual currently does math and reading intervention across K through 8. Essentially, that is not defined as special ed, like a child who does not have an aid or is on an IEP, but in terms of that intervention just to help that kid who's struggling a little bit, the student, that is one person currently who is doing that across all those grades and seeing all those students, whether individually or in small groups. And it seems like a lot of work for one individual and perhaps not really possible to get it all done. So as you're looking at that, I would wonder if you'd look at adding a position there. And then I also know that Haldane has had curriculum development as one of their district priorities in terms of K-8 alignment specifically. And they do have more district priorities than we do. But as part of that, my understanding is that they have hired a curriculum, I'm not sure of the term, but somebody to oversee their curriculum development in the school. And that is now a position they have in place. And whether we in a small district could either look to share that resource with them, if that's potential, consolidation, but just share, or add our own person at some level to oversee the literacy, math, writing development, so that it's not all falling to the teachers who are doing a lot of other things, and also to make sure it is, I think it's really hard for the teachers on the inside to say, well, this aligns. There's a lot of communication that needs to happen. It kind of seems to me like there needs to be somebody on top of all that to oversee it and like make sure it's all working. Yeah, so basically I want to know if you plan to add any positions as part of this plan. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. What do we got, Kristen? Tell us what it is.
Take one, you get some pat them around.
That's it, okay.
So, we are definitely a leader because we just held our first Youth Climate Summit. I'm passing around stickers to our board members and also a postcard that was designed by one of our 8th grade students. So we had 120 students take part in our first Youth Climate Summit, the first in the Hudson Valley, because I like to be the first in everything. It was a great day. I got a lot of positive feedback from the teachers, from the participants, and the BOCES machine was a hit. The K-5 students got to participate in their own little way. You know, I have to thank, of course, GSEF for helping fund the summit. the Wild Center, the Garrison Teachers Association for providing the breakfast, to our generous food donations from Vera's provided the donuts, Dolly's provided granola, we had cookies from Homestyle, we had parents, Jocelyn and Jason and a team preparing a hot lunch for all the students that came, and of course we had Nancy Romano helping me with the technology, our principal, Alex Levine, Mike Tawdry and his facility crew for helping to like set up this event. And so I'm very happy with how it went. Very happy it's over too. So I can get back to annoying you guys about other things. But no, seriously, I'm very grateful that the school got to do this. And actually, I wanted to just give this to the board in case you wanted to see some of the programming.
Oh, excellent.
So that is that. My other comment is I'm extremely thrilled that Peter Davrin and Turner Construction have been lending their expertise for the heating project. Obviously, I'm a strong believer. We've got to electrify. That is the goal. The goal of the country is electrification. Fossil fuels have to go. Everything has to be electrified. That is just the future. And if we can tie that in with solar, great. There's lots of different options. We don't even have to put panels on our roof. Our town is part of the community choice aggregation. I think we can opt into that and get renewable energy. There's solar projects being built in Wappingers Falls. That's a possibility too. You can basically like have panels over there. You don't even have to buy them. You just have to say, this is how many panels I need, and they give you 10% discount on your usage. So there's different options we need to look into. It doesn't have to necessarily mean putting panels on our roof. That is all I have to say about that. And then my PTA hat on, there was a lot of parents who were very concerned about the article that came out a couple weeks ago about a hate extremist person who had gone to Garrison, who lives in Fishkill. People went to school with him. So it was a lot of people were feeling very upset, very concerned. I specifically was like thinking about election day, how people were coming in and out of our school all day long, and anyway, so that's something that I just wanted you to know that people were feeling a lot of anxiety around this, and I don't know if there should be some sort of public statement that we don't believe in hate, we don't condone hatred, and I don't know. So anyways, I just wanted
Is that what you're recommending?
Well, I definitely think we need to take a strong stance and say, like, look, this is we are not a school that tolerates any sort of hatred or any sort of, what that guy espouses is the exact opposite of the Garrison values. I would hope. I would assume. And also, right? And also, and my fear is that these groups are often like linked to like dangerous things, and so it's like, what is our upping the security or just being in contact with the security? Like, do we have to? So is there anything that we need to be, I don't know, concerned about? So it's just bringing it up as the PTA president, things that were brought to my attention. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Other comments?
I'm Stephen Wallace. I'm Jasmine and Sophia's father. I'm not going to speak very much. I think I've put a lot into the letter that I'm giving you. I'm going to say that 2 weekends ago, I was at a yard sale didn't know the people in Garrison, and I bought some things. Nice young couple, have one child here in the school, and we started speaking about the school. I don't know them, and they proceeded to tell me that they're removing their child from the school, and they told me the story behind it, and it really, and I wrote this in it, just touched on it, but when I kind of talked to the dad, and I said, well, I mean, are you really quitting? Like, don't you want to try and push? And he said, I don't have the time. Like, I'm going to the city, and I'm working hard, and my wife's working, and I don't have the time, and I've tried to approach it. And I'm not going into particulars, so we don't have to worry about anything about what I said. I'm just saying as a general feeling of why I'm expressing something here, which I have to say, that how they had a meeting, and it wasn't to their satisfaction. And so then an email was sent, and it was not responded to. And I'm sitting over here now, and I'm looking at your presentation of what we want for our future. And number 5 was about communication and community. And that's something of the priority that was, I know it's a beginning, so it's not, but I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, what's happened this year? And not even about my experiences, which I'm not feeling, here I am again, and I'm still feeling not satisfied in how, I don't feel like things have been resolved. And I said this last time I was here, that if it's not dealt with, and it's not resolved, and I don't feel good about it, then it's going to keep on bothering me. And so the father, I said, isn't that, he's going to put them in private school here. And it's like, that's a lot of money, Nate, isn't it X amount? And he's like, yeah, and I got school taxes on top of it. And I felt so bad. I was like, write a letter. Come on in, man. Write a letter. I will even help you edit if you feel afraid about it. Just say what you need to say. And I went away. He didn't get back to me. I gave him my card. And I was so upset about it. I was really, and I'm still genuinely upset about that when he said to me, it's insane that he had to go through it. And he said, even the kids around the issue, like it just, the way it was, I'm trying to do it fast.
No.
The way it was, I'm aware.
I believe that, it's okay, Steve, you do it fine.
The way that it was dealt with, even with the other kids, wasn't dealt with properly, according to him. And it's very upsetting that we're losing children and losing parents that are new to this area or are community members. And number 5 was community and communication. And I'm looking at that going, I don't know. Why is that a priority? Why isn't that a priority in 2018, 2019? And what I feel is that if we're not getting it right at our adult level, then how are kids going to learn? And all I want my kids, I'm not willing to compromise on the education of my children and the values and if you have to be it's not just about doing math and reading, it's about how you communicate in relationships. That's really the number 1, and being able to express yourself. And I just try and teach our kids basic things, and I don't know if it's understood here. And that is, for me, a problem, and I've addressed it there. And I just want to say, finally, I think we can do better. That's what I'm going to say. That I know we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I love this.
Let me say, one of you heard our discussion about how these priorities should be discussed going forward. And one of the instructions or suggestions, strong suggestions we gave to the administration was that you need to show us what a starting point is. Describe the current reality and describe what you want to get to and how you want to get there. I suspect that when this topic comes back again for final discussion, the board will heartily endorse community and communications as a priority, and we won't have to spend a tremendous amount of time dissecting the current state of play, because I think there's a broad and deep understanding that there's plenty of work to be done in that area. Is there anyone else with public comment? Tamar.
I've got a fifth, a third, and a first grader. They're everywhere, the subs boys. So I have two questions which are quite process-based. So in the presentations, in the last board meeting, we talked about PBIS. And I would love to understand what the process is for evaluating if it has been successful, like what was the criteria we used, if I'm allowed to know. What was the cost of that program as well? And if we're looking to continue part or some of it, what that would look like. Would we change our success criteria, and would the costs associated with it change? First one. And the second one, I love process, is when will the recommendation presentation on priorities occur? Is that something that happens in a board setting, or is that something that happens in a public setting? And if so, could you let us know?
Thank you.
I know we can answer some of those questions.
Oh. I'll take
There are
answers.
answers to those questions. Laura, first, yes, it happens in a public setting, but the board meetings are a public setting. So yes, in a public setting.
Perfect.
Dates, please.
Well, we hope to have drilled down just from this conversation of what our next steps are for the next board meeting,
Which is
the 12th of June.
June 12th.
So we should have a,
All right, so we'll have a discussion on June 12th. That discussion may go on to another board meeting. It may be definitive at the time. We'll see, but it'll be up again the next time we meet on June 12th, and you'll see a refinement of what we just said. And then either a conclusion, as in these are our priorities and this is what we're going to work towards, or some additional refinement to be resolved definitively at our subsequent board meeting.
Right, and sorry, and that will be priorities with associated recommendations below, like desired outcomes or
Right.
with the rationale.
The rationale, the desired outcomes. And if the administration has to say at that point, in order to address that priority, we are going to, over the near term, identify model programs that we can successfully incorporate here, that will be sufficient. I don't think we don't expect in that regard that they need to come with a series of model programs already identified, vetted, and ready to roll out here. So I think that answers that question. As to the PBIS questions, take that offline. Alex, Laura, help them understand those. Those are good questions all. Take them
So we have
offline.
the agendas still online for the meetings, so people can see when they come up too?
The agendas go live as soon as they're ready for them.
Thank you.
Other public comment? If not,
Sorry, I
please
forgot
go.
to add one very important thing. Forgot to add something super important. How our students were leaders on the day of the Youth Climate Summit. I'm very remiss for not mentioning this because our students helped get food donations. Our students introduced our keynote speaker. They were introducing our speakers at the workshops. Each student was sort of responsible for one workshop presenter. Two of our students led a workshop. We had students present a climate action plan. So all throughout the day, it was really our students stepping up and being the leaders that we really want them to be. So and of course I have to thank Mr. Keegan. So there you go. I'm like Mike, I've got to finish up my thank yous. All right, I'm done with my thank yous. Thank you.
In our last board meeting, there were concerns about students crying and being in closets, and that there's sort of mayhem when lockdowns happen. I just wanted the folks to know that they're inflexible. They're state mandated. We need to do them, but we do them with sensitivity and kindness and care and guidance for our students. They're brought to a certain safe area. We are teaching them, unfortunately, in this world that we live in, we need to make sure that we're providing our students with the skills and the ways to protect themselves when an issue or a crisis arises, and maybe to save their lives. So we are doing it with care. We are doing it with urgency. We are doing it in a strategic, thoughtful manner that is state mandated, but also we make sure that it's the Garrison way as well. So I want parents to know that we're taking, I know you're trusting us a lot with your child's safety and academics and social emotional well-being, and we take all of those parts very seriously, including that lockdown piece. There are areas that maybe, if there are students who are anxious during these times, there are things that maybe we can build into their IEPs, such as headphones for sound cancellations and other things that we can talk about during our meetings with the special ed department, and things that we can do to support them. But practice is going to help them. That's going to put them at ease when something does hopefully never happens, but if it does, they're able to protect themselves. So I wanted to make sure that I put that out there for you. And then there was concern about our middle school math. Our teacher is going on maternity leave, and that our search might have been late in the game. But please know that when we raised the rate for certified teachers, substitute teachers, to $100, we got a number of people who came in, filled out the application. They were stellar candidates, and because we did such a good job, they were hired to full-time positions. So as we got closer, we were still searching, and we were losing them along the way.
They were hired, I'm sorry, they were hired at full-time positions elsewhere.
Elsewhere,
You
yes.
identified people back in February that could have filled this spot, but by the time, no one's gonna wait around to get a substitute job in February, or for May when I got it. When they get a full-time job in February. So, got it, okay.
So for both of our positions that we have longer leaves, we dipped into the new teacher pool. And so we have, we'll send out some communication to the middle school parents about our substitute, which hopefully we'll be approving later on in the agenda. And then we have somebody for Jennifer Pitts' position right now while she's out. So. And then lastly, I had the pleasure of spending the entire day with Annabelle Tormey because she was superintendent of the day. So she was in charge, and I was her assistant. We observed classes. We did
Where's
our
her presentation?
Yes, I should put her. You're right. She's very capable.
I know she would.
We did rounds. We did observations. We documented Colonial Day. We debriefed at the end of the day. So it was such a pleasure for me. I hope she had a great day as well, and I hope we continue that because I really enjoyed it. And she also, we had a lot of lunch bunches in my office too. So we started out with a couple of 7th graders. We had a bunch of 5th graders in there, and some 6th grade girls. So she got to get to meet some kids across the grades as well, and they respected her new position and listened to her feedback and comments, and then they were able to share, what they were doing that day and what they learned. So it was a really nice day. So thank you.
They didn't come in and ask for cupcakes and everything? Or?
And that came from a GSEF fundraiser. So it was a pleasure and an honor spending the day with Annabelle.
Questions for Laura on her report?
I have one about lockdown drills, and which would need clarification, but perusing my school law book, there is something, there is a whatever, clause, something, put it away. Something that says lockdown drill parents can be or are to be notified 1 week prior to a lockdown drill. And I'd be curious of what that language is, what it means. Is that something we should do? Is that and if it's optional, is it beneficial? Once again, providing parents, helpful communication of how to talk to their kids, a range of ages, about lockdown drills. Or is this something that's mandatory that we're not doing? Thank you.
Questions for Laura from the board on the report? If not, Ms. Hutter, Treasurer's report.
Good evening. We have the April Treasurer's report there. First is the multi-fund. We started out at $1,347,556.72. Real estate taxes, the second half of the taxes were made whole in April. So you see that 542 came in. The other incomes, there was $10,000 that were paid to us from the county on penalties. That's real estate penalties. Other miscellaneous revenues, and the 180 is actually a transfer from the capital fund. The board may recall approving closing out the capital account. You'll see when I go to the investments, I didn't totally close out that account, but I moved the bulk of the money over into the general fund because we have to until we get a new capital project going. And we had overall disbursements of about $765,000. So we ended out the month of $1,315,167.30 on the multi-fund. And then if you turn, well, I'm turning the page over, scrolling down for you. The investment accounts for April, we started out with 7,186,521.53. Again, we only had interest income of 5,657, and you see the one transfer going over to the multi-fund of the 180, basically almost closing out the capital fund, leaving 9,157.96. And we ended out the month on the investments of 7,012,178.62.
Questions for Sue? Very straightforward report. Any questions? If not, then it's resolved the Board of Education, the Garrison Union Free School District accepts the Treasurer's Report for April 2019 as presented.
So moved.
You take a second. All those in favor? Aye. No abstentions, no nays. Thank you, Sue. Now we've got budget status, revenue status, warrant reports, a budget transfer, and a TRS reserve resolution. You have to tell us about that when you get to it.
I'll explain that, yeah.
Okay, fine.
As far as the warrant reports, budget reports, revenue reports are all pretty much business as usual, so unless there's any questions, I'm gonna move right on to the budget transfer, which is pretty much a simple budget transfer, mostly related around special education expenses. I mean, they're all pretty small except for, you see the outside contractors, and they are related to special ed expenses.
What line are we moving it from?
I'm sorry?
What line are we moving it from into?
Tuition.
Oh, I'm moving some money out of tuition.
Oh,
It's basically our OTPT, that type of thing that is, usually this time of year, we just see that line getting stretched a little bit.
Resolution of the Board of Education, the Garrison Union Free School District approves budget transfer number 7 in the amount of $27,550.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions, no nays.
I do want to laugh that the money we got out of one place was $43 for money on our investments or something, the interest.
Yeah,
Oh, on one investment. Yeah, actually, I mentioned this earlier, Courtney, and Laura, we had our finance committee. The interest rates are coming up slowly and surely. So I was actually a little surprised to see that our investments are actually starting to bring back some money. So where in the past we were making under 17,000, we're probably going to pull in about 70,000 this year, maybe in interest. So it's getting better. I'm looking into doing some short-term CDs that would actually boost that a little bit. But right now, the interest rates are still in flux, and I don't really want to get into anything very long-term with that. And that being said, just a very brief conversation, just so you're aware of it, for the next board meeting in June. I normally give a presentation with the fund balance of what we're going to possibly use for this current year and what we need to put it back into the reserves and stuff for next year. The state actually just recently approved the TRS sub-fund account, and very briefly what that is we have, and you probably heard me mention this before, we have an ERS reserve. That's an employee's retirement reserve. For years, the state ASBO group, which I belong to, has been fighting for a TRS reserve. So what the state has approved is you can have a sub reserve in your ERS reserve. And there's some rules and regulations, and without belaboring this meeting any longer, it really is, you can have up to 10% of your TRS salaries for the prior year in this account. The little, I guess, caveat on that would be that you only can put in 2% of salaries per year. So what I'm going to suggest at the next board meeting, and that's why I'm discussing it now, because the resolution is about a page and a half long, that I will have ready for you to look at ahead of time. For us, that means about 60,000, and there's different ways that you can do that. You can fund it with extra fund balance from this year. You can use it as part of your ERS, take some of the money from the ERS and put it into the TRS. It just gives the district more flexibility if and when retirement costs start going up. I mean, this year the retirement costs went down, if you recall, during my budget presentations. I'm sure that you all fondly remember. So I just want you to be aware that I'll be talking about that, or at least giving the board a resolution that's a little bit different this year, because I would like to see that the board would approve this and go forward with that. My recommendation.
Thank you for the heads up.
Okay.
Any questions for Sue on that issue? If not, we've got a consent agenda, B through E, which isn't so bad. All right, resolve the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District accepts the consent agenda as presented. Items 6B through E. First is the minutes of the May 8th and May 21st board meetings. Second is the approved CSE recommendations. Those are in your package. Third is appointment of substitute teacher, appointment of Tyler Kroll as a substitute teacher at the daily rate of $85 for the 2018-19 school year. Next is a sports merger. Approved sports merger for modified cross-country, baseball, softball, boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, football, boys soccer, girls soccer with the Haldane Central School District for the 2019 and 20 school year. Each of those agreements are in your package. We'll talk about that in 1 minute. Just for some clarification. No, wait, there's one more, I think. No, that's it.
So moved.
Can I suggest, why is Mr. Kroll getting $85?
He's, his graduation is pending, certification pending.
So we don't have, many of these sports that we do not have. But do I read this correctly, that with this consolidation, if we had somebody who wanted to run cross-country, for example, they could do that, they would do it at Haldane as part of the consolidated sports program? So much together, excellent.
And is it just for middle school? Usually
Yes, just for middle school, right, yeah. So, any questions on the consent agenda? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Wait.
Second.
Oh, okay. Courtney's got it. All right, what do we got? Discussion items. We have committee minutes for the Environmental Education Committee, the Safety and Health and Wellness Committee, and the Audit Committee. Audit Committee, we heard from the auditors in the back end immediately at the end of that, so there's no need to belabor that one. If there is, the minutes of each of those meetings are in your package. If there's anyone who was at those meetings who wants to call special attention to anything in those meetings, now is the time to do it. Otherwise,
One thing to note,
yes.
the environmental ed meeting was May 20th, not April 20th.
Oh, we amend that as
So that,
necessary. Yeah, thank you, Jill. Summer action items we'll go to. We have board meeting dates. We already talked about July 10th. August 21 is being proposed as the end of summer board meeting. So the resolution is straightforward. Resolve the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves the following summer 2019 Board of Education meeting dates: July 10th, that's the reorg and regular meeting, and August 21, 2019.
So moved.
Give me a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. No abstentions, no nays. The only thing I will say is, given what Garrett described for us as the amount of work that needs to be done between now and the vote, if we're to have a vote in September, it may be that we need to call together a meeting strictly just to deal with outstanding issues attendant to the capital project. But I don't know that that's going to be the case, but it certainly seems like a possibility.
You mean before?
Before exactly. So sometime between July 10th and August 21, there may be a need to get us together on the capital project.
Are we confident that we're going to get 4 people here on August 21st? Do you know that? Because I don't think I'm going to be.
Is Sarah going to be here? Yeah. Sarah's going to be here.
I'll be here.
We're brushing up against a quorum.
I should be here.
There you go.
Do we have to pick a time?
For what?
Usually we do it earlier in the summer.
Well, pick a time of day? Oh, I don't know.
Usually we do it
It's subject to availability. Beth, you'll get to all of us and find out when we're. School forest cabin, this is an interesting one. I'll read the resolution and Laura can update us on this altogether admirable undertaking. Resolve the Board of Education, Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves the agreement by and between the district and the Westchester Putnam Council and Boy Scout Troop number 437 dated May 22nd, 2019.
So moved.
Give me a second and then Laura.
Second.
Laura, just briefly bring us up to date. The actual language of the agreement is attached. It was drafted by our attorneys in consultation with attorneys for the troop. So just
Yep, so the Boy Scouts Troop 437, they actually presented here one evening.
we recall.
And spoke about the idea of revitalizing the cabin, which is on the 403 side, Boy Scout cabin, which has really good bones. It just needs a little tender loving care. So as an Eagle Scout project, Alec Masick, who's an alumni here, has proposed to make this his project. So he's going to work with his troop as well as parents in, I believe, a little roof work, some new plexiglass windows, door, and some strengthening of its foundation. I believe those are the larger pieces, and that they will open it up through the district to other schools if they wanted to use it, to our students, to the community. They don't want to say it's the Boy Scout community, it's more of a cabin, it's more of a community cabin. And if folks want to use it, we'll figure out a process of how it funnels through the district to make sure that there's that people do the right thing, and that we're not overbooking. And that it could be, there's some great ideas happening of maybe there's some retreats that could happen there.
Overnight stays?
Excuse me?
Are they talking about overnight stays?
They were talking about overnight stays because they've done it in the past. Day retreats, using it as a science center, and putting supplies in there where students can use it as a science classroom. So there are a lot of ideas. We're just happy that it's happening, and then we can just sort of dream and see things come to fruition. So I know Sarah's very excited about that.
That's a great idea, and they're to be admired and appreciated.
Yes.
All those in favor? Aye. No abstentions, no nays. We've all had a lot to say tonight, but we are at that point of the meeting where board member comment is solicited. So if anyone has anything.
I just wanted to say, and unfortunately Crystal left, but to thank you to Crystal for all the work she did on the Youth Climate Summit.
Yeah, it seemed like a tremendous
huge amount of work, and
detailed
it was
undertaking.
wildly successful, and I just,
Thanks a lot.
yeah. And they learned a lot.
Yes.
Hope it continues.
Other comments? If not, we have an executive session to discuss personnel matters. So resolve the Board of Education, Garrison Union Free School District adjourns to executive session to discuss personnel matters.
So moved.
Any second?
Seconded.
All those in favor? Aye. No abstentions, no nays.
In favor?
Thank you all. Thank you, Sarah, for hanging out.
I got you, David.